So Rick Miller asked me to do a Hope² talk last year, and I successfully said no. But you know that you can never avoid saying yes to Rick Miller, so he got me for this year. And I was reluctant, because I said, what does a business owner have to do? It's a different world. Well, I really have a message that matters. But I'm so glad I did this. And the reason is, personally, it was just an opportunity for me to look back at my career and our firm through the lens of hope. I'd never really done that before. See, I retired in 2014, and I led that firm for close to 35 years, and we were the leading financial services sales organization nationally. And we led the country for the last 20 years that I was there. And I'm really proud to say that my successors have continued to succeed, and our advisors have continued to be hopeful and successful. And I think that's because of the kind of culture that we were lucky enough, maybe a little talented enough to build. Before I speak about how we grew that culture, I think you should probably know a little bit about me. So I'm from Brooklyn, could you tell? Bensonhurst specifically, and I was from a lower middle class family. And in high school, I got on the B6 bus and went to Lafayette High School. And then after graduation, I took the B5 bus to Brooklyn College. That was my educational experience, not particularly worldly. And my first job after college was that of a teacher. I was a 7th, 8th, and 9th grade math teacher in a junior high school that the New York Times wrote about as the worst school in New York City. So what I found out just the other day on Monday is that I was a tweener, right? I came in, I was enthusiastic as can be. I wanted to make a difference for the kids, but I was surrounded by fundamentalists and survivors. I don't think I met a believer in the entire year that I was there. As a matter of fact, I watched the survivors negotiate with the kids. Remember, that was one of the things Dr. Muhammad said? They actually, one guy said, if they don't bleed or fight in my classroom, they don't have to do any work. That was his negotiation. They seemed miserable to me, and that wasn't the kind of future that I wanted a part of. So I left. And I wound up stumbling into the life insurance business, the financial services business. I was a salesman, and I was a sales manager. I guess I did well enough. I became a junior partner. And a couple of years after becoming a junior partner, after the excitement of having made partner wore off, I realized that I was miserable coming into the office every day. And I said, if I'm not happy, can you imagine how the rest of our people must feel? And I knew why, too. Our senior partner, he was a good guy, but his attitude was that he was the most important person in the organization. And I didn't want to be part of an organization like that. That's not my style of leadership. So it took about another year and a half, but I eventually convinced him that it was time for him to move on, and I bought him out. And this was the scariest time in my career. Because, you know, to some extent, I had hid behind senior partners for most of my time in the organization. And now I'm up front, and I have to lead, and it was scary. But my instincts told me that the most important thing I had to work on was culture. I had to change our firm from one where people were uncomfortable coming to work to one where they loved it. Now, I have to confess, I did this as an unconscious component. If today I look at my firm through the lens of my Kids at Hope training, which I've had, I realized that, you know what, we believed our people could succeed. And we worked hard to connect with them and build sustainable relationships, and we showed them a future where anything was possible. And I know that if I was starting a firm today, that would be the foundation for the culture. But back then, I was kind of, I guess, winging it, right? Interestingly enough, I'll just say this quickly, that when we started to do well, which took a couple of years, but then we kind of took off, people started to ask for our stuff. You know, can I borrow your training program? Can I borrow your marketing initiative? Hey, so you're doing this, can we have that? And I always lent it because I believed in sharing. I thought that was the right thing to do. But that's when I learned about culture, because it never worked at their firms. So I began to understand just how much I had to guard this culture and grow that culture. Okay, so it's been very fun and interesting for me to actually look back and examine how did it come about? How did we get to the place we are today culturally? And I realized that a lot of what we did is applicable to any organization. So I'm going to quickly share about probably 10 different things that we did. It's kind of like, picture the organization's culture as a soup, and there's all kinds of ingredients that we're putting into that soup and mixing it around to see what we got. And the first thing we put in, the first thing I remember doing was we declared that we are a greenhouse, that our environment has to be one where it's perfect for people to grow, that they can reach their highest potential, get the things that they want in life, because we're going to make sure that our environment supports all of that. Didn't we have a soil conversation on Monday, right? So again, unconscious competent, but I was working on the soil. We've had a lot of coaches come in and bring their knowledge and their expertise. And one of the people who influenced us a lot was Simon Sinek, his book, Start With Why, because it was clear to us that telling people or telling each other what we do and how we do it is not particularly interesting. But it is powerful when you can tell someone why you do what you do, why you get up in the morning, why you are so passionate about the business or your chosen career. Everyone in our organization did a why statement. They would have their own personal why statement as to why they have chosen the career they've chosen. And when we had meetings, I always chose a handful of people to read their why statements, because I wanted to get into the soup, right? I wanted to make sure it was there. Another thing that we did at every meeting was we had people tell stories of lives that they had impacted. Someone who retired with dignity because we did the right planning. Somebody who, perhaps a widow, that got to live in the home and not have to go to work and be with her children because we did the right planning. And we would share those stories too, because we wanted to make sure our people were passionate. Value creation, that was a biggie, because we can't have an entitlement mentality. Our philosophy was that you should not expect anything until you have created value first. As a matter of fact, each year, at the end of the year, our leadership team would get together and say, what do we have to do? What can we do to increase the overall value of this firm for next year? So you had to always be getting better. And one of the reasons in my field that you had to be getting better is that as our advisors became successful and productive, they got calls every week from other firms looking to recruit them. So we had to continue to get better, and that was an important part of our culture. We trained our people to reinvent their definition of failure. I think Charlie Appleton told us about that yesterday. We wanted them to see failure as the best thing, to not be stopped by the idea that, oh, we might fail or stumble. You're never going to play a big game if that's your idea of it. So we wanted them to understand that failure has always been a better teacher and a better mentor than success has ever been. We did something called positive focus before every monthly meeting. So we ran a big meeting every 30 days. And I'd start the meeting by having everyone write down 5 positive achievements in their lives between the last meeting and this one. Personal, business, health, fitness, whatever. And then they would share it with whoever was sitting next to them, so it actually got spoken to. And again, we want to get it into the soup, right? And I also wanted the meeting to start off positive because I want it to stay positive. I want to have an exciting, interesting meeting for the next hour. And it carries over to the rest of the workday and the rest of the work week. We had everyone do gratitude journals. I would say most people in our firm, for some length of time, some probably still to this day, keep a gratitude journal, where every day at the same time, they write down 5 things they are grateful for. And they can only repeat one thing from one day to the next. It's an amazing thing, because what it does is it builds your ability to appreciate life. And I think, my own personal opinion, is that the key to happiness is the ability to appreciate that which is around you. So it's an awesome exercise, and I suggest that. We also did something kind of strange. We did personal growth programs and training at our firm. So yes, we did sales training, we did process training, we did product training, but we also did the kind of training where people had to look at how they were operating in the world. I kind of think of it as our job was to shine a spotlight on where they might have a blind spot about something that was holding them back from being as good as they could be. And it is amazing the kind of transformation that takes place when somebody makes that kind of discovery. My philosophy was simple. If we grow our people, we will grow the firm. We preached to not be disappointed because clients are not going to remember what you said or did. Like you could have a meeting with them 2 weeks ago, you come back and the client doesn't remember what you said or did. But they will always remember how they felt when they were with you. So being with them and being authentic with them and being connected to them is the single most important thing you can do in a one-on-one relationship. We preach that with a strong culture, you can accomplish anything, because strong cultures give confidence to all who are part of that culture and who believe in the mission of the organization. Okay, last two things. We did a lot of ontology work. So ontology is the science of being. It's like, how did you get to be exactly how you be and you be? And to be effective, you have to be aware of who you're being while you're doing what you're doing. I'll say that again. Who are you being while you're doing what you're doing? And I'll give you an example. So let's take two salespeople in our organization, and one of them is having some financial issues. Let's say they're either fear-driven or money-driven. That's what's on their mind, and that's who they be. And then we have another advisor who is a mission-driven advisor. Very clear that their job is to find what the client's needs are and to fill them so that they have the best financial future possible. Now, from the client's perspective, is it a different experience? Remember, they're going to be trained the same way by our organization. They're going to say the same words. They're going to use the same software. They're going to have the same presentation. Is it a different experience for the client between the money and fear-driven person and the mission-driven person? Totally, completely different. So the question is, who is the teacher being? Who is the juvenile justice professional being while they're doing what they're doing? Does a child have a completely different experience when they're being taught by a fundamentalist who thinks that if they're not learning, it's the kid's problem, versus somebody who's a treasure hunter? Completely. But here's the thing about this. This is a conscious choice. You're not stuck being any one way. You can choose who you're going to be when you're doing what you're doing. I think Charlie referred to that when he talked about there were actors. So maybe we have to put on and step into the part that's going to be the most powerful part for us to play in the role that we have in life. It's got to be a conscious choice, though, because if not, we each have a default way of being. And I'm going to tell you that you don't know what your default way of being is. When you're not choosing, there's a way you slip into. And I'm going to suggest that, I'm not going to say it's bad, but I'm wondering if it's as powerful as it could be if you decide to make that choice each and every time. Because we taught our staff that before any interaction with another human being, they had to make a clear choice about who they were being, because who they were being was more important than even what they were doing. Okay, last suggestion, last culture building thing. We worked with a woman named Dr. Faye Mandel. I want you to remember that name because I think her work is kind of cool. Her whole deal was about that in order to live life powerfully and effectively, you needed to live in the present moment. Isn't that interesting, right? Because most human beings, she felt, and I've come to believe this to be so, spend too much time in their own heads. You know that little voice? You do know the little voice, right? That one that we have ongoing conversations with? Well, one thing I learned from Faye is that there has never been anything significant that we've learned from having a conversation with that voice. They don't know anything we don't know. So kind of talking to it is a waste of time. And this is how it looks. Picture the model. Picture a horizontal line. And on this, we're going to call that the timeline. And I want to explain to you where our minds go to. To this side of the line, that's the future. And usually we go there when we're worried about something that hasn't even happened yet. Think about whether that fits any time, if you spend any time there in your future. Over here on the other side is the past. And this is where we usually are either regretful or disappointed or sad about something that's already happened that didn't go the way we wanted it to. That's just one line. There's a space line that's a vertical line that goes right down the center of the timeline. And here, I call it the judgment line, because this is when in our heads we're spending time in judgment. So going up, it's judging other people and things. You know, like the government, the principal, the school system, the elevators in the hotel, the new initiative at school. It's all that judging of that. And then the other way down is actually going into us, deeply into us. And this is where we judge maybe the part of ourselves that we like least. You know, not tall enough, not smart enough, not rich enough, not handsome enough, not whatever enough. And all the time that we're spending in there, we are not at the center point where they meet. That's the here and now. That's the present moment. And that's where we're most effective, and that's where we're most powerful. We have the power, though, to put our attention exactly where we want to. This is a gift of being a human being. We don't have to stay in our heads. We can choose to move to the present moment and decide that where we are, who we're with, and what we're doing is exactly where we're supposed to be. And we can build this habit. We can strengthen this choice to make sure we're always in the present moment. And we have to do that. Why do we have to do that? Because we're treasure hunters. And it's only in the present moment that we authentically connect with kids, that we see the treasure in all kids, that we build and share our belief in them, that we help them time travel. And kids need to learn to be in the present moment, because that's where they actually learn. That's where they execute on the vision of their future time travel. Her book is called GPS to the Present. It's kind of a cool book that combines psychology and physics with this model. But I think it's needed. We need to practice this more, because the more time that we're in the present moment, the more effective we are in life. So here's how I want to close. I want to close by asking you, please, to never forget some things. What I want you to never forget is that you're heroes. You're heroes. The work you do is not easy. You don't get appreciated for it on a regular basis. But what you do is so amazingly important. And I'm honored to speak in front of you. I also want you to never forget the legacy you're creating. You know, you're not even going to live to be able to see the full impact of the work you do. But every time you guide a child to success, you're making a difference for generations to come. And then the last thing I never want you to forget is that you're responsible for the culture in your organizations. It's not the leader's job. It's your job. It's all of our jobs. What you say, what you do, and who you be within the walls of your organization either adds to its culture or detracts from its culture. So I want you to be someone who helps the cultural tide rise, because the rising tide will lift everyone in the organization. I want to thank you for your generous listening. You were awesome, and enjoy the rest of the Masters.